Australia is a land of vivid contrasts. There is the image of its modern, cosmopolitan cities like Sydney. However, looking beyond them towards the centre of the continent, one sees a different image, the vast, sun-baked landscape of rural Australia. On this land, known variously as the bush or outback, a small, rugged population of Australians make their living by running cattle, raising sheep, mining, and related work. And it is this image of this land, this life, like the Western frontier for the Americans, that sits at the heart of Australians' national identity. Sharing the essence of this land and its people is the goal of photographer David Robert Austen. He spent nearly 20 years capturing the images of rural Australia for National Geographic, Smithsonian Magazine, Geo and more, to reveal the haunting beauty of outback life to generations of armchair adventurers.
I grew up one of 9 children in a northern Indiana family. In high school, I developed an interest in electronics and photography, working on stage productions, sometimes acting, occasionally taking pictures. College was not an option for me at that point, so I enlisted in the Army Signal Corps. In Korea and early posting, I discovered just how much I loved making photographs. A patient Korean man in Daegu taught me about lab work, and after buying my first camera, I knew the die was cast. Without money to buy much film, I could still spend my time profitably in the darkroom. I soon found opportunities to travel to about a half a dozen countries, and I knew that making images in these places, and especially of these people, was what I most wanted to do. Later, I worked for a Philadelphia newspaper group, and my horizons expanded again. I was given names of contacts in France, and it took little more than that on a one-way ticket to prime the pump. Mornings in Paris, I studied French from 5 a.m. to noon, and then went to work with Gamma Press, one of the largest photo agencies of its type at that point. A Gamma assignment in a small coal mining town in England made me realize that beautiful Paris was just a bit too crowded for me. I contacted an Australian family of doctors I had met in Marseille, and they quickly encouraged me to immigrate. Within a few months, my paperwork was ready at the French consulate, and I soon arrived in Sydney bright and early one morning, just one more new Australian, that gentle label the Aussies had for us. Australia was truly a land of opportunity for me. Beyond the fabulous exotic birds and beasts, there was a climate allowing outdoor photography about 350 days of the year. Many Australians were working outdoors then, in the bush and the outback, and I found them welcoming, sometimes as interested in me as I was in them. Australia and I seemed to choose each other.
In this red soil and sand terrain, you find Australians young and old, Caucasian and Aboriginal, working side by side while often living separately. Each group honouring its traditions, cherishing all forms of life, exotic and domesticated, that rural Australia offers. I grew up in northern New South Wales on a cattle farm. Although we were on the coast, we lived a life very similar to the ones depicted in David Robert Austen's photographs. About the time that he was capturing these images in the 70s and the 80s, Australians were just beginning to find a new appreciation for the lives and contributions of rural culture, the descendants of the original settlers. Like America, Australia was populated by immigrants. The first Aboriginals arrived from Southeast Asia over 50,000 years ago. Then the British, who claimed Australia as a colony in the late 18th century, when they learned of its isolation, punishing heat and sun-parched soil, the British government made the continent a jail. It then deported as many convict felons and political prisoners, many Scottish and Irish, as they could to the new colony, along with a few imperial officials to rule its development. It's important to note that this was precipitated by the War of Independence. Previous to this, the British were transporting their convicts to the American colonies. If it weren't for this war, Australia could well have been colonised by the French or the Dutch. Over the 19th and 20th centuries, these original settlers and their descendants were joined by immigrants from nearly every part of the world. Together, we survived, won our independence and forged our own values, culture, government and nation. In Austen's words, we ended up Australian. Although fully part of modern Australia, The culture of rural Australia remains elemental, at one with the land. It is a culture where the emphasis is on the importance of human relations, not the appearances or getting ahead. Life is, in every sense of the word, grounded. When living remotely in a sparsely populated land, family is of utmost importance. It is where you get your sustenance, your companionship, your safety and survival. The family is a team, an economic unit. Everyone works, everyone has his or her job in childhood and beyond, and often the unit supports more than one enterprise. A family-run police station might also serve as the post office, the local branch bank, and a family residence. This environment fosters a strong sense of self-reliance. While the population may be scattered across a wide expanse of land, there is still a sense of belonging to a community. Small country towns provide places where people meet up to get supplies, check up on local news, have a cold one, and in general, stay in touch. The big community event is the annual country show, with people of all ages preparing and putting forth their best wares, canning, baking, livestock and more for admiration, prizes and sale. The importance of belonging can be seen in Australians' enthusiasm for uniforms, especially school-aged children. Uniforms instill their identity as a member of a group, as part of something larger than their remote family life, as part of a community, a people and a nation. And they are one of the exemplifiers of the egalitarian Australian ideal.
I've known David as a student, and he was curious, intelligent, artistic, courageous, persistent, independent, and I could see not destined to be a company man. I've been in contact with David and followed his work for more than 50 years, and know his National Geographic editor, Bruce McElfresh, valued David's photographs for their extraordinary stopping power. Pictures that compel people to look, to study the image, and then relate to the story. David's work shows an uncanny ability to be in the right place at the right time. He can win just about anyone's confidence and gives him access to situations where he can capture images that are unexpected and sometimes difficult.
There's no getting around it. Life in rural Australia is not easy, and one of Austen's achievements is capturing some of the more telling images of how hard it can be. There are many dangers beyond the ones nature presents, like the relentless sun and the damaging winds, the snakes and the spiders. Daily work often requires the use of injury-threatening tools, like knives, guns and heavy equipment, dangers that can cause injury that require calling the flying doctor, or if luck's not on your side, the flying padre. Dangers also threaten from afar: animal diseases, climate shifts and droughts, or the collapse of international markets that bring down or require the destruction of entire herds, periodically bankrupting families, even entire communities throughout the large areas of rural Australia. And yet, if you leave the country, as I did about the time David Austen was taking the photographs in this exhibition, life in the outback remains one of the images of home you carry in your heart. With all its challenges, the outback is a great place to grow up. Children are respected and included in all the rituals of family life. They are given the freedom to explore, play and dream. From sunrise to nightfall, their earliest constants are the sun, wind, stars and sand. Red sand under the fingernails, red dust in the creases of every face. Simple joys that create delight. These are the features of rural Australia that all of us who ended up Australian share in our dreams. Along with the message of a famous Australian anthem, no matter how far or wide I roam, I realise something I've always known. I still call Australia home.